Buenos dias. My name is Antonio de Padua. Maria Severina Lopez de Santa Ana y Perez de Lebrón. You may refer, if you please, you may want to refer to me as El Presidente, because you see, I was president of Mexico 11 times from 1832 to 1855. Perhaps you'd want to refer to me as Generalissimo, El Comandante, El Soldado del Pueblo, the soldier of the people. Perhaps my favorite title, the Napoleon of the West, for you see, I fought in more battles than did Napoleon himself. I was born in the year 1794 in Veracruz in Mexico. It was a beautiful port city where the great sailing ships came from all over the world. So you see, my father wanted me to be a merchant, an international merchant. Thank you for coming. That is what he wanted me to be, for after all, I could be there to make deals with people from all over the world. But as a boy, there was only one thing I always wanted to be. Un soldado. A soldier. That's what I wanted to be. And so, at the age of 16, after much pleading, he allowed me to enter the military academy at Veracruz, the Fijo military regiment, under the command of the very famous general, Joaquin de Arredondo. And so at that young age, I began fighting in battles for the King of Spain. Now, throughout my years as a general, as a military man, as a servant of the people of Mexico, I've always had one big problem that has come back to dog me over and over again, to bite me in the leg. A thorn in my side, a pebble in my shoe. That problem, Tejas, Texas. Started in the year 1813 when I fought in the largest battle ever to be fought on the soil of Texas. It was the Battle of Medina. And let me set the stage for you. As you know, 2 years earlier, the Grito de Dolores, the cry for independence, was issued by Father Miguel in the town of Dolores. Father Miguel Hidalgo. After that, a battle began. By 1813, the rebellion was mainly quelled in the lower part of Mexico, and the revolutionaries had made their headquarters in San Antonio. There were two military officers, one from the United States named McGee, another from Mexico named Gutierrez. They gathered an army together, Mexican revolutionaries, American soldiers of fortune, and Texas Indians who just liked to fight. And it was no small army, 1,500 men. They converged on the city of San Antonio, but we intercepted them 20 miles to the south on the Medina River. If you were to go there today, there is a lake, Lake Medina, near that place. And there I learned from General Arredondo a very valuable lesson, which I carried with me throughout my military career. And that is, when you defeat your enemy, you must not only defeat him, you must crush him. When you have your foot on his neck, you must never let up, for if you do, then he will rise up and crush you. Yes, indeed. I remembered this throughout my career. I returned to Mexico to fight in many battles. I will not bore you with all the details except to tell you once again, I fought more battles than did Napoleon. In 1821, at the end of the revolutions, I switched sides. Now, I need to tell you something, a free word of advice, and that is this. If you were ever involved in a revolution, it's a good idea at the end of that revolution to find yourself on the winning side. It was very fortunate that I was indeed on the winning side. I went to hold many offices in Mexico. I will not bore you with the details except to tell you that there were two parties that emerged. First, the Centralistas, who believed that Mexico should have a central leader, sort of like they had before with the Viceroy, but not from Europe. Secondly were the Federalistas, the Federalists, who believed that each state of Mexico should govern itself. Which party was I with? I ask you. Was I a Centralista or a Federalista? Anybody? From time to time, yes. But at that time, yes. At that time, I was a Federalista. I was a Federalist, a Republican. I was a friend of Stephen F. Austin and the people of Texas. In fact, I represented their interests to the government of Mexico City. In 1832, I became, for the first time, the president of Mexico, elected as president. As I took office, I realized that I had made a mistake in judgment. Now, have you heard, or do you think, have you heard about me that I'm a man who is inflexible, doesn't realize when he is wrong? No, I admitted my mistake. For you see, at first I thought that the people of Mexico could function as a republic. But I came to realize that they were not yet able to function as one of the democracies of the world at that time. And what they needed was a strong leader in Mexico City to rule them up. And who do you think I had in mind for that position? Yes, it was me, myself. I was that man. I was that man. So what did I do? I abolished the Constitution of 1824, which I had one time promoted. I abolished the state governments. Leaders in Mexico were not happy. 11 states formed armies against me. I had to take matters into hand, show them who's boss. So I gathered up an army. I went into the state of Zacatecas, a silver mining town, and there I did to that army of 3,000 gathered against me exactly as General Arredondo had done at the Battle of Medina. Word spread throughout Mexico. Don't mess with Santa Anna. It also spread to Texas, where they had declared an independent republic. I was already with my army at that time in San Antonio. I arrived on February 23rd, 1836. I gave them a chance to yield my authority. But that fool Travis, he answered with a cannon shot. He said no. So it was a small matter. On the 6th of March, a few hours, we decimated them. We destroyed every one of them. Why are you looking at me like that? It was the law of the land. Revolutionaries must be destroyed. 3 weeks later, we moved on to Goliad, where Fannin, also a fool, did not heed the advice of his general, Sam Houston. He did not leave his fortification. You see, Sam Houston did not believe in fortification politics where soldiers huddled up in a fort. He believed an army should be out in the fields where they could move around, advance, retreat if necessary. But Fannin remained in his fort. When he finally tried to leave, we surrounded them, 400 of them. We killed them all except for a few. At this point, mopping up Texas would be easy. Now, I did have a problem. I had an army of 4,000 men with me. It's pretty hard to supply an army of 4,000 men from Mexico City, so I divided them into 5 different groups, sending each one of them against a different group of citizens. It would be easier for smaller groups to find food and supplies than one larger group. My army followed after Houston. He had only 400 men when we started, and he was retreating to the east with his leaders telling him to stand and fight. Finally, on the 20th of April, we found ourselves face to face with the Army of Texas, a place called San Jacinto, or in the English tongue, San Jacinto. We each had an army of about 1,000 men, but I had 500 reinforcements on the way. I knew that Houston would have to attack the next morning, so my men worked feverishly all night long, building a wall of defense. We piled up saddles and supply crates, anything we could find, brush, logs, and early in the morning on the 21st, we were waiting for them with our rifles poised down the hill. But they did not attack. So we waited, and we waited. We waited some more until just afternoon. It was evident they would not attack that day. After all, in those days, people did not start battles in the middle of the afternoon only to have their gains erased by the setting of the sun. So I ordered a hot meal. We called for a siesta as our reinforcements came in. They had been marching all night. My men had been working all night, so we enjoyed our siesta. About 3:30 in the afternoon, we began to hear the sound of music. But it was not a military march. It was the strains of some Irish love song, Will You Come to the Bower? They took us by surprise. In less than 20 minutes, my men were scattered. I scattered with them. I was caught the next day and brought to Houston. Now, Houston was a man who knew that sometimes discretion is better than valor. For you see, I thought that would be the last day of my life. The men, they wanted action. But Houston knew that I was the president of Mexico. I had the authority to sign a treaty of peace. He knew that I was the commander of the army. I had the authority to order my men back to Mexico. And I had the authority to recognize Texas as a republic. I decided to do this, for after all, how could I continue to serve my people if I were not alive? He returned me to Mexico. I was in disgrace, kicked out of office, had to retire to my ranch at Veracruz, waiting for an opportunity to come back. That happened in 1838 when the French sent a fleet into the harbor because Mexico had not paid their debts to France. I raised up an army, defeated them, but I was wounded. My leg had to be amputated just below the knee. Though I lost my leg, I became a hero of Mexico. They had a big parade, and in the middle of the parade was a coach with a case. And in this case was mounted my pickled leg. The people cheered as it went by. In 1836, once again, I was president of Mexico, and you know what happened. In 1836, Texas became an independent republic. In 1846, again, I was president of Mexico. What happened in 1846? Texas became a state of the United States. Again, another problem with Texas. It seemed that the United States thought the border should be the Rio Grande. We thought it should be 80 miles to the north at the Nueces River. A war ensued, the War of the Mexican-American War. People know little about this war. Did you know that the Americans sent 100,000 troops to Mexico in this war? You've heard the Marine hymn, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. The halls of Montezuma refer to Mexico City. Again, I was the commanding general, the president, and we lost. We had to recognize the border as the Rio Grande, and for $10 million, or $15 million, I should say, to sell all of our northern territories, no small tract of land, California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, parts of Colorado, Wyoming, Kansas, 1/3 of the landmass of the continental United States in this transaction. I was once again put out of office. They were angry with me. I was exiled, but I found a way to come back. In 1853, once again, I was president of Mexico. Mexico was in debt again and needed money. I needed money. And so I made a deal. It seemed that in the United States they wanted to build a railroad all the way across from east to west. And the prime route was my old nemesis, Texas. It would be easy to take the railroad across the flat land of Texas, but they had a problem. The Rocky Mountains. What they needed was a mountain pass, where instead of building up and down the mountains, they could build across on flat land. It seems that in Tejas, there was such a mountain pass. The Rockies come down from the United States, the Sierra Madre come down from Mexico. This place is known as El Paso, the pass. So I sold to them the Mesilla Valley to the west of El Paso so they could build their railroad through on flat land. Now you may hear a nasty rumor about me. You may hear that I took some of the $10 million and put it in my own pocket. Surely you would not believe such a thing. But they did in Mexico, so I was exiled. Now where does the former president of Mexico go when he is exiled and wants to raise money to come back to power? There's only one place. New York City, baby. That is where I went, to Staten Island. And there I did something for which each and every one of you owe to me a debt of gratitude. I was living at the time with an inventor named, and a businessman named Thomas Adams. The year was 1865. They needed rubber for carriage wheels. It was a big business. Rubber was expensive. Now there is in Mexico a tree called the sapodilla tree. And when you take the sap, process it, it creates a synthetic rubber. So we thought. Senor Adams invested $30,000. that would be millions today. It failed. He lost it all. But like me, Senor Adams was not a man who took defeat lying down. He always found a way to come back. He noticed that on a summer evening, I would take the bark of the sapodillo tree and I would chew on it. So he took this, he mixed it with a little sugar and food color and created the product we know today as chicle, chewing gum. So you see, it was Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna who brought to you chewing gum. You're welcome. You're welcome. So I was allowed to return to Mexico, but never to power again. The lesson from my life is life has victories and defeats. You must accept them and rise up again. I was a general, had victories in battle. I rose to the position as president of Mexico. I became very wealthy, many victories and many defeats. I lost battles. I was kicked out of office. I was exiled, even imprisoned, and my money was taken away. So what I say is, when you are down, get up, no matter how much it costs or how long it takes. So I leave you today with these words. Viva Mexico. Viva los Estados Unidos. And reluctantly I say to you, Viva